Hello, I'm Edward Hunter and welcome to highlights of the 2025 Formula Simracing World Championship. Round 7 of the championship is the Singapore Grand Prix held at the Marina Bay Street Circuit, venue of the first ever night race on the Formula 1 calendar back in 2008. Because of this fact, the drivers have to adjust themselves to driving under lights on a circuit that's bumpy and demanding on the brakes as the drivers go anti-clockwise to negotiate 62 laps of the 4.9km challenge at night. The race saw 14 drivers line up on the grid with significant absentees, including championship contender Ruben Machete, who was absent due to fatigue, as well as MV Conquest Jesse Lahtinen. Mark Schluter managed to put his CMT Go Team car on pole position for the second race in a row, with 3 Optiminal drivers a constant threat behind. Jeffrey Fournier and Zoltzuks got within a third of a second behind the championship leader, with Janos Braksok also in the mix, over 3/10 off of pole. Patrick Hanko struggled a bit in qualifying to take 5th, but was still 2/10 ahead of Christian Pascal. George Zalagianis outperformed himself in qualifying to take 7th ahead of Cosimo Prosciutto, who makes his first appearance since Austria to take 8th. Sander Callas, meanwhile, had a poor qualifying session, 9/10 off the pace, and ends up in 9th, whilst Tom Oldenmenger rounds out the top 10. Mirko Mancini keeps himself ahead of Nandor Master by 15 hundredths, whilst Matt Toussaint and Lucas Viscott are left with it all to do from the back row of the grid. At the race start, Mark Schluter made a lightning getaway on the soft tyres going into the first complex of corners, whilst Fournier tried to muscle in on the German's inside. Everybody made it through cleanly apart from Oldenmenger, who spun out at turn 1, but was able to continue on, with the Singapore Grand Prix circuit not promoting many opportunities for overtaking. A train started to form as multiple drivers struggled to find a way past one another. This was certainly the case for Fournier, who couldn't find a way past the championship leader into the race lead. At the end of the opening lap, the top 10 was Schluter, Fournier, Zux, Hanko, Braksok, Pascal, Prosciutto, Zalagianis, Callas, and Mancini. In the early stages of the race, the main focus wasn't at the front, but at the back of the pack, as Matt Toussaint defended 12th from Nandor Master, with the Go Team driver looking to prove himself in the early going under the lights. The pressure got to the British driver ahead of him as he went wide at turn 4, giving Master ample opportunity to take 12th on lap 2. It was a bad couple opening laps for Tom Oldenmenger though. Having started from 10th on the grid with only 14 drivers participating, the Dutchman lost ground in the early going and found himself at the back of the field. By lap 5, a train was starting to form behind Schluter, with Fournier looking for any sort of opportunity to one-up the championship leader. Fournier was joined by Zux, Hanko and even Braksok, who began to get involved at the back of the fray. On lap 7, Hanko attempted to overtake Zux for 3rd at Memorial Corner. The pair went side by side for multiple corners before eventually Hanko was run out of road by the Hungarian and forced into the wall at turn 9. The delay for both drivers allowed Braksok and Pascal up to 3rd and 4th. Hanko subsequently had to pit for a new front ring, dropping him to 13th ahead of only Lucas Viscott. The Czech driver's night would come to a premature end on lap 9 when he lost control at turn 5 and slammed into the inside wall. A sad end to the MV Conquest driver's day. On lap 12, Zux was gearing up to repass Pascal with the DRS when he suddenly lost control and slammed into the Italian, sending the Go Team into a huge spin as Zux was heavily damaged and headed straight on into retirement. Prosciutto also had to take to the ramp in avoidance of his teammate, all of which allowed the ground effect cars of Zalagianis and Callas to climb into 4th and 5th. Prosciutto would then pit at the end of the lap, but Pascal would attempt to carry on, hemorrhaging time and positions in a hobbled car. Fournier pit from 2nd on lap 16 to switch to medium tyres and was followed a lap later by his teammate Braksok and the Go Team of Marsa, both of whom would do a second stint on the mediums. Schluter then responded by pitting on lap 19 for his own set of mediums, handing the race lead to Zalagianis for the first time in the Greek driver's career. Schluter was released from the pit exit only to see Fournier sweep around the outside, having undercut the German by 2 seconds. Meanwhile, Patrick Hanko was on the move, diving up the inside of Matt Toussaint for 9th. The Englishman ran wide into the runoff, allowing Hanko to go round the outside into turn 8 to climb to 8th. Things were not so clean at turn 14 moments later when Braksok briefly tangled with Mancini as he overtook the Vega Valley eSports machine, the Italian surviving a half spin. On lap 21, Fournier would use the DRS to breeze past Callas through turn 6, putting a car between himself and Schluter. The Frenchman would then dispense with Zalagianis on the long run into turn 16, retaking the lead of the race. Schluter himself passed Callas in identical fashion right behind them. Zalagianis would then be overtaken by the championship leader at turn 14 the following lap, freeing Schluter to chase down Fournier for the lead. Callas would then pit at the end of lap 22 for a set of medium tyres, emerging in 6th behind Oldenmenger. Zalagianis made his own stop a lap later for a set of hards and saw his more experienced teammate undercut him for 5th. Oldenmenger came in for a second medium tyre stint after 24 laps, but he had stayed out a lap too long and found himself leapfrogged by Hanko, his teammate Mancini and Pascal, meaning he had it all to do from 9th. Hanko though would be in by the end of lap 26 for another stint on the mediums. By half distance on lap 31, the order was Fournier leading Schluter by just half a second, Braxock was 5 seconds behind in 3rd, Callas was another 20 seconds down in 4th, Zalagianis was on for a career best result of 5th, then Mancini was in 6th, leading a train of Pascal, Oldenmenger and Marsa, as Hanko completed the top 10, rapidly catching them all on his alternate strategy. On lap 32, Oldenmenger dived up the inside of Pascal at turn 1, the pair running wheel to wheel through turns 3 and 4, as Pascal left just enough space for the Dutchman to go around the outside of him. However, it was a crafty play from the Go Team driver as Pascal used the DRS to try and go round the outside at Memorial Corner, but unfortunately he arrived too fast and took to the runoff, meaning Oldenmenger had to muscle his valet around the outside at turn 8 to complete the move for 7th place. Pascal responded by immediately pitting for another fresh set of mediums. A lap later and Schluter picked his moment, using the DRS to boldly swing around the outside at turn 7, but he sat on the curbs as he did so and had to brake late into turn 8 to usurp Fournier for the lead. Fournier then turned to plan B, which was to pit at the end of the lap to switch back to softs and rejoined behind Braxock. The Hungarian would himself pit a lap later for hards, resuming in 4th between the two ground effect cars. Mancini opted to allow his teammate Oldenmenger past him into turn 7 on lap 36, putting the Dutchman into the top 6. 2 laps later though, and disaster struck as Mancini veered off track at turn 1 before going out of control and crashing into the inside wall at turn 2. The loss of the rear right tyre leading the Italian to shower the circuit in sparks before retiring the car. Callas would pit again at the end of lap 39, allowing Braxock through into 3rd, the Estonian putting on the hard tyre for the final 23 laps. But no sooner had Braxock climbed back onto the podium would his brakes start to fade into turn 5, leading him to slam dramatically into the wall as the Optimal eSports car was well and truly a write-off. Pascal was also suffering with brake trouble and would pull up in the runoff, his day compromised by the earlier contact with Zux. With 19 laps left to go, Schluter would pit from the lead, planning to get to the end on a set of soft tyres, a big gamble for the German, allowing Fournier back into the lead. Oldenmenger would be the next to put on the softs on lap 45, allowing Patrick Hanko into 5th. Hanko himself would pit at the end of the following lap, falling to 7th place. Fournier was being rapidly caught by Schluter, and he would make a final stop for softs on lap 47, emerging 12 seconds behind the German, but with 4 lap fresher tyres, the chase was on for the lead. Zalagianis would then make his final pit stop a lap later for the medium tyre, with a podium still very much on the table in a race of attrition. Marsa would make his final pit stop for softs on lap 53, ceding 6th position to his teammate Hanko in the process. With 9 laps to go, Schluter led Fournier by 10 seconds, but the gap was closing considerably. Sander Callas was 35 seconds down in 3rd, staring down his first podium since 2019, ahead of his teammate Zalagianis. Oldenmenger was 5th, Hanko had recovered up to 6th, Marsa was 7th, and Matt Toussaint was in a career-high 8th place as the final car still running. With 4 laps to go, Fournier had cut the gap to just 2 seconds, pushing hard to put Schluter under pressure. Going into turn 5, the rear tyres on the Go Team stepped out, and in arresting the slide, Schluter found his front wing heading for the wall and shredding clean off the car. A rare error from the championship leader meant Fournier would go flying around the outside and into the lead at turn 9 as a powerless Schluter headed back to the pit lane for a front wing change. The German's lead was such that he was still able to have a full service and emerge in 2nd, 3 seconds clear of Callas. However, in the most dramatic of circumstances, it would be Geoffrey Fournier who had competed on and off in the World Championship since 2017, who would finally take an inaugural victory. Taking his first win in the World Championship, Geoffrey Fournier heads home on the top spot of the podium in Singapore, becoming the third driver to win a World Championship race in 2025. Mark Schluter's late slip-up may have cost the German, but he still came home in second and in touching distance of the championship, while Sander Kallas completes his own comeback of the race with his first podium this season. His teammate Zalagianis makes it a grand effect 3-4 in Singapore, whilst Tom Oldermenger takes 5th. Patrick Hanko had a tough night in Singapore, but still manages to net 10 points with 6th. Both Nandor Massa and Matt Toussaint finish in the top 8 for the first time this season, despite Toussaint ending the race a lap down. With 8 drivers out of 14 finishing today, the Singapore Grand Prix, as usual, took no prisoners on a night of high attrition. After 7 rounds, the Drivers' Championship standings sees Mark Schluter have one hand on the trophy, the German leading the title race by 54 points with 3 rounds remaining. Geoffrey Fournier still has a shot at the title, but those chances are getting severely slim. Sander Kallas' third place today has ensured the Estonian stays in third, just 1 point behind Fournier. Patrick Hanko is still in the mix for the title, but only narrowly so, with the Slovakian on 89 points. Tom Oldermenger's chances of the championship have gone as well, along with Ruven Mercedes. Janos Braxox and Zolt Zuk's retirements today have cost Optimal Esports dearly. George Zalagianis holds on to 9th with 50 points, and despite not finishing today, Christian Pascal still rounds out the top 10. In the Constructors table, CMT Go Team regained the lead from Optimal Esports by a narrow margin of 4 points, the first time the Swedish outfit has led the title race since Austria. Grand Effect affirmed their status as best of the rest in third, 47 points ahead of Vega Valley Esports. MV Conquest did not score any points thanks to Viscott's retirement, while Squire Nation Esports had nobody available to drive in Singapore. The next race is the United States Grand Prix at the Circuit of the Americas in Austin, Texas on Sunday, 2nd of November. You can watch that race live as it happens right here on our YouTube channel. Qualifying begins at 8:30 p.m. GMT with the race at 8:45 GMT. In the meantime, you can join us on our forums at formulasimracing.net as well as our Discord server for up-to-date information and join in on the community. The links are in the description below, and you can check out our socials on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. We hope you've enjoyed today's presentation by the excellent Ron Squire. I'm Edward Hunter, and join us for the next round of the 2025 Formula Sim Racing World Championship.